Good morning, everybody, and welcome to this week's Motor Trade Radio podcast in association with eBay Motors Group. It is Saturday the 7th of March, and you're joined by myself, Philip Nothard.
And me, Curtis Hutchinson. Now, Phil, we've been doing a bit of research, haven't we, into not just how long we've been on air, but which episode we've got to.
We have, and we need to just do our own little quick calculation then, make sure that we're right, weren't we, and just get our heads around it. But we've discovered that this is the 274th episode, which actually does align with our thoughts around when we did actually start doing this, and that's just over 5 years now, isn't it?
It is, yeah, because it's our fifth anniversary. This is episode 274. We're sort of accelerating towards episode 300, so we're going to have a bit of a party for that.
Keep an eye on that one, won't we? Keep an eye on that one. But it's been an interesting week, hasn't it? I mean, you know, with everything going on with the coronavirus. Must get that right. But you pointed out that around when we talked about it on the previous episode about the Geneva Motor Show was cancelled, and it went online, didn't it, this week?
Yeah. It's I mean, this is totally unprecedented. I've never known a motor show to be cancelled, and Geneva is the big one because it's the annual, it's the first annual show of the year in Europe, and it's a huge event. It goes on for a couple of weeks, and I've only ever been on press days, so there's two press days, of which you would think you're at a public show because of the sheer numbers there involved. But as you say, it's been cancelled. It's gone online, and I must say a lot of the manufacturers have reacted swiftly, and they've done some really good unveilings online.
Yeah, I've only managed to catch one so far this week, and I'll probably try and do some more over the weekend. But I saw the VW one, where they were showing off the new Golf and the new Touareg as well. So very, very well done and very short and very well recorded there. But as you say, it's a case of they reacted very quickly with this. And I think you've watched one or two yourself, haven't you?
Yeah, I watched the Skoda Octavia launch, and as I've been to Geneva so many times, what I found quite refreshing was that I was able to sit down in comfort with a coffee, not being jostled by a camera crew or other journalists and photographers, and could actually hear what the talking head was saying and actually look at the car.
Yeah, and rewind as well. And if you miss something, rewind and pause and things like that. Yeah, it does make it a lot easier.
But you know what? This is Geneva Motor Show. It was going to be interesting anyway, because it was the first one that Ford said it wouldn't attend, and indeed PSA Group. So this was before coronavirus, and it does kind of reflect what manufacturers are thinking in terms of motor shows and their long-term commitments, because various brands have dropped out of Frankfurt and Paris and now Geneva. So as it hasn't happened this year, there will be bean counters within manufacturers sort of weighing up whether or not they actually need to be at motor shows. So it could be some interesting developments from this.
Yeah, it really does beg the question whether they do need to have that sort of volume of transport take place and people commuting to go and see it, etc., that actually, doing that in the digital space has been effective for what I've seen so far, and has definitely worked. So maybe, as you say, it's the way forward, isn't it, for that?
Yes, yeah. I mean, it pains me to say so, but can you justify a show of the size of Frankfurt, for instance, which is absolutely massive, and over it must be 8, 9, 10 halls, and how many cars are sold as a result of these shows. And these are the hard questions that manufacturers will be asking themselves at the moment.
Definitely. So just before we sort of cover on some of the headlines that we've got this week, Curtis, I mean, we have got an exclusive coming up over the next couple of weeks where we are doing a special one-off podcast, and we are focusing on mental health and well-being, and hopefully, fingers crossed, it goes well. I think we may need some help afterwards, possibly, because this is going to be a first where we've got 3 people, hopefully, as guests join us on the podcast. So that'll be 5 of us in total. So let's hope that the internet and everything is in our favour. But that's coming up over the next couple of weeks. So just keep your eye out for that one.
Yeah, definitely worth listening out for that one, because we have got some interesting guests coming on the podcast, which we'll let you know who they are once everything's confirmed, and
Yes.
we'll let you know on the social media channels.
We will. So the headlines this week, Curtis, do you want to run through what we're going to be talking about this week?
Yeah, we've got the new car sales figures for February, and indeed the van registrations as well. We've got an update on profitability, dealer profitability in January. We've got some acquisitions. We've got Virtue and possibly Stephen Eagle acquiring some Vantage Motor Group site, so we'll give you the lowdown on that. And we've got an acquisition from Cox Automotive, so that they've acquired C Walton during the week. So lots to cover this week.
We have. So the first one, and everybody's been waiting for this. We've got the figures that have come out from the SMMT for the month of February, which isn't obviously the biggest month of the year as we know, but it's quite interesting because it isn't just about the month that the SMMT are talking about this time, and the story from is covered on AM Online, and actually the header is that the SMMT urges VAT exemption for EVs following February car sales decline, and they're referring to the fact that the month declined by 2.9%, so that was down to 79,594 from just short of 82,000 last year. But the SMMT have focused on the EV as the point on this one, haven't they, this time?
Yeah, they have. They've used this as an opportunity to do some high profile lobbying, really. So yeah, you're right. SMMT is calling for the removal of VAT on not just battery electric vehicles, but plug-in hybrids and hydrogen fuel cell cars as well. And it's saying that such a move would actually cut the purchase price of an average family battery electric run car by around £5,600. So whether or not the new Chancellor will take this on board, because the budget is only a couple of weeks away now, and I should imagine the ink has dried on that particular document. But the SMMT is making its case, and quite vocally.
And it's quite interesting. I mean, we do go into a story later on, but there's reference to the pressure on the EU's CAFE emissions regulations, and which debate an average of or dictate an average of the CO2 limit of 95 grams from 2020 to 2021. And we've got more on that later through one of the other stories we're going to be talking about. But as you say, whether it is enough time, because they do call on the budget in the Chancellor's budget, the opportunity to reverse this trend by restoring confidence to the market and showing that the government is serious about delivering on its environmental ambitions. And this is obviously on the back of the environmental ambitions, but also the new deadline, isn't it, for 2035, and they're talking about bringing that forward to 2032 for the ban of combustion engines and the hybrids as well, now included in that. So very, very ambitious on that one. But I think again the headlines tell part of the story. 2.9% down. Not a huge drop. I mean, you're into what, 2,500 units year on year, but we have seen a decline again with diesel in terms of that. So diesel's down 27%, so it's got a 21.9% market share, down from 29.2 last year. And actually, petrol's dropped slightly, so petrol's dropped from 63.5% market share at this point in 2019 down to 60.6% in February of this year, and that's a drop of 7.3%. But I think me and you had a bit of a sort of a social debate on this one, and I think we forget sometimes that where the market's been, don't we? I think the strength of that new car market. I mean, it's down 2.9%, but it is still the fifth highest February result since 2001. So it's still a fairly strong month to a degree.
Yes, you're right, and it is important to see it within that context. And in terms of some brands actually had a good month, and if we look at some of the good performers here, Lexus, they were actually up 61%, which brings their year to date up by 48%. So obviously something's happening there in the Lexus network, because these are good figures. Land Rover was also up for the month. They were up 33.5%. MG, they had an absolute stonking month. They were up 97%, albeit from a very low base, but up 97% for the month, which means they're up 127% for the year to date. So amongst some of the losers there were some winners.
No, you're right. I think there's you maybe see the Lexus on the back of the push towards the EV hybrid alternative fuel sector. MG, I mean, we've talked about MG on the podcast a couple of times, and they've got some huge growth ambitions, haven't they, for 2020? And we know that there is open points being added frequently at the minute, and there's a lot going on there, and they've obviously got their new EV proposition as well within the brand, so that'll probably account for some of that growth as well. But I think again, you'll probably need to get to the end of the quarter, probably get the full quarter results to get a true picture as to what is happening in that new car marketplace at the minute, because looking at things on a month by month basis, and obviously as we were talking before around that EV and the whole CAFE emission regulations, I think there's a lot of challenges taking place at the minute.
Yeah, and following on from the new car registrations, we've also got an update on van registrations. So the van market was down 2% after 2 months of growth, with the SMMT pointing out that demand for pickups and smaller vans fell in double digits, but mid-sized vans bucked the trend and were actually up 9.3%. So year-to-date performance is ahead, which is good news. That's up 2.8%. We're on 37,660 odd vans registered in the year to date.
So moving on, we've got the latest from ASE, again sticking with AM Online there. We've got that the results for January that ASE are talking about there, and they've published that the average UK motor retailer made a profit of 9,000 according to their figures, and that sort of matched the prior year's results, didn't it?
It did, yes. So it's going to be interesting to see how February pans out, and all the talk now is on February, and in fact that's on March rather, which is alluded to in that particular story. So as you say, January on a par year on year with average profitability of £9,000 according to ASC.
Yeah, and as you say there, talking about March moves on to the next story, and we sort of alluded to it there when we're talking about the SMMT, and this is in motortrader.com, and this is commentary coming in from Cambria, and Cambria flags up slower new car order book for plate change. And I think this is part of a trading update into it from Cambria, and they've referenced one around the March order take been slower, but also they've sort of alluded to some of the challenges they expect potentially from the EU departure and the CAFE emission regulations as well.
Yeah, you're right, because they're talking about supply, which it actually comes outside of the interims they're talking about, the interim period, but it's really looking at how the UK coming out of the EU will affect, as you say, the CAFE regulations, and whether or not vehicles sold within the UK will go towards these average figures across Europe, because as we know, the average under the CAFE rules and regs is 95 grams per kilometre. And what Canberra is saying is that no one actually knows at the moment whether or not the UK will count as part of these figures. And by default, that means, will we be getting the supply that we actually need in the UK if manufacturers think that won't count towards their targets? So we've got some interesting and unprecedented dynamics going on at the moment.
I mean, we were talking about this before the show, weren't we? And I mean, it does beg the question that actually anything could happen. When we negotiate the deal, is this going to be part of the deal, or is it not? Is it going to be considered as part of it? Depending on the outcome of that, as you say, we either become a non-attractive place for sending the lower emission vehicles because it's not of advantage because it doesn't count towards the target, or actually then does it counteract the fact that actually we'll get some of the low emission vehicles that they don't want going into other countries that get sent over to the UK because it doesn't count as part of the new target. So it kind of has a positive and negative both ways on this one. It could be an interesting one the way this one plays out.
Yeah, and the telling comment from Cambria is they say at the time of writing, the March new car order bank is building slower than in previous years. In the previous year. So year on year, they're saying the order bank is growing slower.
Yeah, there's going to be I was saying earlier, I think the March result is going to be key, I think, for the year. We will get a clearer picture as to what 2020 could look like for the new car market based on the March results in terms of manufacturer performance. You talked earlier about Lexus and MG. It will be very interesting as to how that's going to look. But again, who knows these days? I think there's it's never an easy day in the new car market, is it?
Absolutely not. So you're listening to the Motor Trade Radio podcast in association with eBay Motors Group, the only weekly podcast serving the car retailing sector. We're available online at motortraderadio.com and by subscribing on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, Deezer, and SoundCloud. Now, the next three stories are all acquisitions, and the first one up is from AM Online with the headline, Cox Automotive UK acquires Bruntingthorpe operator C Walton. So this is a major acquisition and happened over the course of the week, and it sees Cox acquiring the vehicle services provider C Walton, and as the headline says, they're the operator of Bruntingthorpe, but also have sites in Whiton in Cambridgeshire and Long Bennington in Lincolnshire. So what was the significance of this acquisition for the business?
Well, I mean, it's huge. I mean, you know from your Motor Trader days of the test track there at Bruntingthorpe, the proving ground that they've got there. But again, that it's a huge deal. It's a game changer for Cox Automotive. It's undoubtedly going to transform the business at Cox Automotive. I mean, the alignment is there's two family businesses of with this, and that Cox Automotive gives them that whole end-to-end used car operation. If you look at C Waltons, they are one of the UK's largest independent providers of vehicle services, and that's in the manufacturer, the fleet operations, dealers, and the daily rental. So bringing that, the addition of C Walton Limited into the Cox Automotive family. I mean, it offers all aspects of used car remarketing program now within the Cox Automotive business, and it's a huge opportunity. And CW Limited are fantastic operators. They've really, it's one huge business, and you've seen that place down at Buntingthorpe there. I mean, the acreage is massive, but again, this is key to that whole end-to-end proposition of the used car remarketing sector.
Yeah, and Mannheim already had a significant presence at Buntingthorpe, didn't it?
They do, yeah. It's Buntingthorpe, Mannheim, and the Mannheim Online used to be down there as well. So again, they've been working alongside each other for some time, and a fantastic and obvious choice that this took place with let's say two sort of family businesses there, and great team. I know a lot of the people down at Walton's there, and some fantastic have them on board. And whilst we're sticking with Cox Automotive, actually, it'd be great at some point. We'll try and get somebody on from Cox Automotive, possibly talk more about the ambitions of Cox Automotive and how that deal came about, etc. But I think one thing that we can talk about on today's podcast is the Barbara Cox Award, and we interviewed Alison, didn't we, back in January, Alison Fisher, who's our Chief People Officer, and she talked about obviously the award and that it was forthcoming, and a shout out to obviously get recommendations and submissions for that. But actually this week we've got an exclusive that we can talk about the winner and the highly commended.
Yeah, so shall I tell you who was highly commended?
Yes.
Yep. Okay. We've got Leanne Christmas from BMW Financial Services and Sue Sansom from Sintner Group.
Yeah, and also there was Karen Bickerstaff from Mervyn Stewart and Sarah Simcox from Volvo Cars that were both nominated. But I say those two were highly commended, and I can announce that the winner. And anybody in the social media space will know this. Alison Jones from Group PSA, and it'd be great, fantastic result there for Alison to be awarded the winner of this prestigious award. I feel.
Yeah, what a great winner. I mean, that Alison's doing an absolute superb job at PSA, and she's actually very active on social media, and she's just getting the message out there about how the brands are actually going forward, working together, and they're doing very, very well at the moment.
Yeah, so I mean, it was Bella Carney from JCT 600. That was the winner last year, and she's obviously been a fabulous ambassador for the award over the 12 months, and she'll be handing the baton over to Alison this year, and part of this is that they receive a £5,000 bursary towards their own development, as well as receiving the award and obviously all the recognition that does come with that. So this is the second year of running the Barbara Cox Award over in the UK, after it's been running in the US for 14 years. So fantastic, and it would be great to have Alison Jones on the podcast, hopefully. So we need to give a bit of a reach out to Alison and invite her on to the podcast, because recently this week, I mean, me and you were talking about it this week, that they've PSA have announced their financial results, and fantastic results for that operation as well.
Yeah, and in fact, I was on a Vauxhall launch for the Grandland X Hybrid only last week, and you can just tell the new momentum now at Vauxhall as part of PSA. It's almost as though the whole GM era never happened. They most definitely have a sort of spring in their step now.
A lot going on. So we're moving on to what we mentioned earlier with the acquisitions within the dealer world that have happened this week. And we go over to AM Online for the first story, and that is that Virtue Motors completes a £4 million Vantage, Kia and Honda acquisition. And those are the sites over in Bradford there that Virtue have taken from Vantage, and we had Robert on, didn't we? And we know that he was talking about that sort of northwest territory with his recent VW acquisitions, and he's added to that portfolio now with both a Honda and a Kia site.
Yeah, and the transaction will bring Virtue's number of outlets in Yorkshire alone to 18. So we can see what's happening there. And you're right, that's something that Robert did talk about, and that whole area is a major focus for the group. So there's some good synergies there.
But it does follow on. I mean, we when the Matt Robinson decided to sell through the management buyout, and I think we talked about it, that we'd probably expect to see some realignment of their franchise partners through once that deal goes through, and we have started to see that first with this Virtue acquisition, but it also on the next story, which is a slightly different one, but this is Stephen Eagle set to acquire 6 Vantage Motor Group dealerships, and this isn't a deal that's been done, is it? This is something that it's a bit of an exclusive, I think.
Yeah, it's an exclusive from AM Online, and it's based on information that was supplied to AM from an unnamed source, but it does look an interesting one. So this will be 6 sites. Now, Stephen Eagle, I mean, what a successful business that is. So it was obviously set up by Stephen Eagle, and it's a Solus Toyota group, and they've got representation across Bedfordshire, Buckinghamshire, Cambridgeshire, Essex, Hertfordshire. So good spread. They're probably, if not the biggest Toyota group in the country, certainly one of the biggest. And we'll see what happens here, because this is based on, as we say, a source and information that was circulated within the company, and this is what AM have reported on. So, interesting development there.
So, I mean, what a week already. I mean, like you say, with the Cox Automotive acquisition of C Walton Limited there, game changer, giving Cox Automotive that full end-to-end remarketing solution for used cars. We've started to see with the Vantage realignment and further acquisition. We had Robert on the podcast, didn't we, following his VW acquisition and the one up in Scotland there, and then quickly moving on to the Vantage, Kia and Honda, and then, like you say, it'd be interesting if this Stephen Eagle one does happen. It'd be great for Stephen Eagle if that does happen, but actually would be worth looking at how that sort of realigns the Vantage manufacturer portfolio partnership as well. So lots still happening, isn't there? I mean, it's just never slowing down at the minute.
It's not, never a dull moment. There's no and finally this week, because nothing funny has happened in the industry this week. It's been sort of full-on business.
It has, yeah. We need Motoring Research, or is it Car Scoop, back on with some amusing endings there. But again, really busy week. Again, that the SMMT results for February. I mean, everybody's watching that very close. There's a lot happening there. We talk about that used car market. A lot of conversations taking place at the minute around the used car market and the balance of supply and demand. Consumer index has gone up again. So the consumer confidence index has gone to -7 from -9 last month. Bearing in mind November it was -14. So again, there's a lot of demand out there, but the dealers that I'm speaking to, and I don't know if you've picked anything up, Curtis, but they just need products, they need stock, and because the demand is there and doing very well.
Yeah, that's pretty much what I've heard. That some of the order banks going into March were good, but I guess the big unknown at the moment is footfall. Customers actually going into dealerships with the coronavirus. So, I mean, that's obviously something we'll be looking at. And indeed, there was a headline that sort of leapt out to me during the week from Bloomberg, which was about car sales in China and how the coronavirus has affected that, because sales were down 80% in February. So I'm not going to start scaremongering. Let's see how March goes.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think there is still a lot going on, and I think there's quite a few people out there that are not wanting to really call what is happening in March at the minute and what it may look like, because there is, every day it's, you hear where some of the large corporates have restricted travel, not just international but UK travel as well. We talk about supply. I was talking with somebody this week about that sort of tier 2, tier 3 supply chain, and the impact that it's having on them through the manufacturer market as well. That I think there's a lot happening at the minute that you don't quite see on the face of it, but if you think about some of the franchise dealerships with the immediate fit in the aftermarket, the product is not coming through. I think we talked about it around the not necessarily the automotive industry, but some of the impact on some of the stuff coming out of China and Thailand and those kind of areas, particularly in the electronics market. It is creeping into the automotive sector because they're waiting for some of this product to come through, and it's not coming through at the minute. So it's going to be an interesting one as this one plays out, I think.
Yeah, well, that's about all for this week. You've been listening to the Motor Trade Radio podcast, brought to you in association with eBay Motors Group, the only weekly podcast serving the car retailing sector. So many thanks for tuning in. Do join us again next week. Until then, it's goodbye from me.
And it's goodbye from him.